Welcome everyone, Dr. Thor here. Get ready for Gnosis. Well, I want to talk about the dark side of electronic psychotronic harassment. And what few people understand out there is that this world is one big complicated mess, and everybody wants to blame somebody else. They don't want to get down to the actual facts of what's happening here. Why are we having these problems, and who is empowering and assisting them? Well, we're living in a world where your neighbors are your enemies and who will work against you and who are easily bought because they don't make a lot of money, and throwing them a few bucks and a little story about how bad you are will easily get them on the criminals' team. This is the typical story you'll get from these people. You have so-called law enforcement, who are nothing more than criminals, who are working against the American people, of course, on every single level. And, of course, even murdering them in the street. And still, these things continue to go on. And we talk about the big bad guy somewhere else, or the effects coming from Russia or other things, when it's right in your own neighborhood. These out-of-control criminal law enforcement agencies are harassing people on a daily basis, working with organized crime, who's supposed to be their enemies. Yeah, except when they have all those envelopes full of cash they're getting from them. So, I mean, this is the problem we have out there, and everybody wants to put it on some big bad guy out there. Now, the bottom line is that all these people are working with all of your neighbors. Your postman, your UPS delivery man, your doctor, everybody that you talk to is part and under their control. Plain and simple. Most of these people willingly go along because they don't have the courage to stand up against any of these evil organizations. Now, really, life is this giant machine. You can see it kind of as a giant machine filled with gears. And there's a big gear in the center turning, but that gear is only allowed to turn because there's so many other little gears connected to it that keep it moving. And that's exactly what's happening. Your electrical worker, your phone worker, all of these people are out there assisting these criminal police, etc., in actually harassing you. So, while there's been some interesting talk with a person I've recently come into contact with, which has defined how some of these attacks are being done, which is quite fascinating of how advanced they are. And the fact that they're actually, and of course it makes a lot of sense and would be very effective to send disruptive energies in many forms through your actual electrical systems. Why not? This would come right into everybody's home. But don't think it's everybody either, because you're being targeted for one reason or another. And the person who's targeted you may be the big bad man in the big bad house, but he has all these other wheels helping him. Your local electrical worker, your local phone worker, your local everybody, your mailman, etc., is all in on it. They're all assisting, and they're all being bought off or paid in one way or another, because nobody does anything for so-called other reasons. So these people are threatened to some degree, but of course if everybody stood up it wouldn't be a problem. But what's new? I mean, I saw this as a young child in schools where a couple of bullies came in and of course took over the entire school of thousands of people. So this is an old story which will never ever change. And the cowardice of the individual person is appalling. But that's the way the world goes. A few bullies run everybody else. But, bullies work to a certain degree, but in the end, there has to be some sort of benefit. And the benefit is that they're all whores. They're all getting paid, and that's what the reality is. But just blame everybody else, to blame the, quote, CIA, other people, this or that, or whoever's doing this directly or indirectly, and they're all doing it. There are 2,200 so-called police organizations out there that were formed after 9/11, which are nothing more than criminal organizations that do nothing but fill their own pockets. Trillions of dollars are missing. There's endless money to do everything except what we need, to build housing, to take care of medical. There's never any money for that. We don't have money for proper fire departments to go out and apparently do their job. We have a bunch of corrupt people in the fire department, the police department, that do nothing. And I'm sure they want raises for doing nothing. So maybe everybody their salaries should be based on the success of their industry. And certainly the fire departments have no success or very little. Certainly the police department has never solved any crimes whatsoever. They haven't controlled anything, or at least don't want to. So maybe they should be paid that way. Not maybe, they should. As a matter of fact, they should be decreasing their salary and unfunding governmental departments that don't work. So when we look at this, we need to understand that. So if you're under some sort of harassment, no matter what it is, and it's very easy, remember that your neighbors have come in. They have listening devices in your house. They have people watching you. They go and talk to everybody in your neighborhood if they want to go after you, and that's what they've done. And they do this consistently. And your neighbors can't wait to get in on it after the stories that they tell them. So this is the kind of scumbucket reality that you're living in. And it isn't Mr. Big Time Fed or anybody else. It's the guy next door to you. Those are your enemies, and don't you ever forget it. It's naive to think that this is something else and that somehow your neighbor is good. Well, this is not true whatsoever. We also have to look at the millions and hundreds of millions, actually it's billions of people who are working together. I would say 90% of the people on the earth are working with these criminal people, which is the reason why things keep perpetuating. Remember that nothing can happen unless it is known about. People have to go in and do all these things. And let's take out even the super personal things of people messing with your electrical meters, your phone lines, and everything else that you are connected to keep these harassments going. We have to look at the great bigger picture. So we all know the fact of what does this all mean? Do you think that these agencies just use this? They're just putting things in your electrical system, that they're dropping things from the sky to pollute everybody? They're building these warfare tools they're using on you? Well, who was involved in this? You're talking about millions and millions of people. Now we have, it's all sorts of super advanced technology and, of course, anti-gravity, etc., that we've had for probably now 20 years. What does that mean? Somebody makes that. Somebody pilots that. Somebody has maintenance on that. Somebody delivered those planes. Somebody washes those planes. So the bottom line is that there's this whole line of people who are involved in this corruption, who work with these things and who are kept quiet through threats or in general working for the system. And I've seen this time and time again. There's also people in these industries that are paid to make sure that if you say anything or anything else, they go and inform on you. So it goes on and on with these kind of scumbuckety people who are out there and working for these by the millions and millions, hundreds of millions, billions. If you think that people don't know something, you are really living in a fantasy. As a matter of fact, there really is no secrets. What's interesting about it is that these, quote, secrets are kept by the people that are told to keep them, meaning the average person. So the whole idea is all these people are working against and working for these people to control and destroy others, and these secrets are kept. They don't talk about the fact. People don't talk about how corrupt your UPS driver is, how corrupt your mailman is. All of them are corrupt and working for criminal so-called police who harass people, murder them, kill them all the time. And this has been documented quite well. So the whole idea is they they are the criminals. They don't work with them. They are the criminals, and they have huge amounts of money they use to harass anybody that they don't like, which is basically the citizens. They certainly don't arrest anybody. They certainly aren't controlling crime. What type of crime is controlled is those people who are generally on the outside, those people who have done things that are minor in nature in terms of their effect on greater society. They may be large in society, meaning they may hurt or rape or push or molest people, whatever it is that's out there for some relatively minor offenses or some very offensive stuff, but they're not arresting anybody who are really criminals. These are just people that society demands that be controlled, and generally they make sure they take their sweet time doing that as well. Nobody of any serious criminal backgrounds are ever arrested anywhere. It's all a game. This is the kind of nonsense that you get from a very corrupt legal system that allows these people, that actually works with them. Well, the police aren't going to go out and harass you directly. This is too obvious, even though a lot of this still goes on. You certainly can find out a book written on the Los Angeles Police Department, which details their corruption and how they had assassination squads and everything else, and nobody does anything about this. They're certainly not doing anything to help the public, and they cry they never have enough money, but they certainly do, and so-called police now are paid extremely well for what is basically a pretty easy and corrupt job. But that isn't good enough for them, just like federal law enforcement, who are all on the take. So the bottom line is that you come down to all these people are working with these criminal people. And they're more than happy to do it. My neighbor was paid thousands and thousands of dollars, had no really good job or background, yet he spent years racing cars from money that he got from criminals. So all of this stuff is quite interesting. And you have to really wonder, of course, they never looked at the fact of why the police department would be paying so much to harass somebody. And, of course, if there was such a bad person, why wasn't any of these people arrested? Well, they never were. It was all bogus nonsense so they could just harass people. And it goes way beyond this. They hire these gangs to cause car accidents and murder people. This happens all the time. So this is the easiest way to cause people serious problems without necessarily even killing them. If you're a sadistic group, you don't necessarily want to kill anybody. You want to disable them, keep them in pain, so they kill themselves, or make their whole life miserable because it's so difficult to get anything healed or changed. And of course, with what? With horrible medical services that are usually available around the world, and particularly in the United States, which has one of the worst medical systems on the planet. So if you understand all these things, and you understand what's going on, but people don't want to face this. They want to think a faceless, nameless adversary is attacking them. Well, it isn't. Not even in the slightest. So all of these things are going on which have been perfected, and influence has been brought in, as happened after World War II, where hundreds of thousands, probably millions of Nazis were brought in. People who they gave big executive positions to, gave them rocket technology and space programs, which they made sure they screwed up. We don't have a decent rocket program today because the Nazis made sure that they didn't build the rockets properly. The Russians, who were operating rockets and delivering astronauts to the space station, of course threw those bums out and didn't allow their evil ways to infect their programs, and have always been ahead in rocketry. So the whole idea is this is all the same thing. We had plenty of American rocket specialists that we could have used, but that's not part of it. Your military uniforms look more like Nazis. Their helmets look like them. Looks like a whole bunch of Darth Vader people. So the whole idea is all of these things are the bigger influences that went in there. And of course, these people went all around the world after World War II and murdered millions and millions of people. And of course, nothing was done about it. the farcical allowing these criminals to get away because of the lack of military competency is shocking. And of course, that's another problem as well. From Nazi generals in World War II that said how much they loved the enemy, to their incompetency of not wanting to fight, like Eisenhower did, of course, who didn't follow through with proper policing and control of enemies. And of course, we left all sorts of enemies sitting there because nobody wanted to fight anymore. Pretty sad. So the whole idea is that's why we have problems today, because nothing is ever solved. But we all need to understand that all these attacks on people and everything else are not done by some nameless, faceless people. That has to be connected to your personal reality through thousands, hundreds of thousands, and ultimately tens and hundreds of millions of people who connect all these things together to complete the, quote, circuit, or to keep those little wheels spinning. That's the dark, dark side. And that's why nothing ever changes and never will.